Underrated watches from popular brands. Today, I want to talk about a watch enthusiast fan favorite, and that is Omega. So let's get right into it. So of course, Omega is well known and well beloved by watch collectors and watch enthusiasts alike, as it represents one of the most historic brands with a number of incredible model lines, namely in the Speedmaster and the Seamaster, that are well beloved and familiar to watch collectors because of the incredibly rich history of these model lines. Whether it's the Speedmaster being the watch that was first worn on the moon, or the Seamaster, which graced the screen, of course, on the wrist of Pierce Brosnan and as well as Daniel Craig in the James Bond movies. Of course, Omega has a number of other significant model lines that I feel are really criminally undervalued on the secondary market today, starting with my first pick, and that is the Omega Globmaster. For the price point, it's hard for me to think of a watch under $5,000 that packs more value. We're talking about a coaxial escapement wristwatch with an in-house movement from Omega that is in 39mm in a stainless steel case with a tungsten bezel and that significantly important pie pan dial. Now, for those who don't know, the Globemaster is actually a part of the Constellation line, and that specific pie pan dial was actually originally designed by the most famous watch designer of all time, of course, his name being Gerald Genta. Now, for those who don't know the original design, it is the Omega Constellation. It was not known as the Globemaster. Of course, that's kind of the modern iteration, and of course, the design has really changed, but you can definitely see the design cues, namely in that pie pan dial, that is used in the modern wristwatch. And I think for under $5,000, how can you really beat it? I mean, take into consideration that a fluted bezel Datejust, really in any variation, 41mm, let's say, is going to run you, for the most part, at least $10,000 to $11,000 on the secondary market, where you could pick this watch up for less than half of that. The watch, even brand new, retails for $7,900, which I think is a really great price point overall, considering, again, all the value you get, the in-house movement, the incredible bracelet from Omega, not to mention the phenomenal design designed by Gerald Genta in that history, of course, with respect to the actual dial itself and the model line itself. So it's one of those knockout stunner pieces that I think can either be a center of your collection, really something that brings everything together, that perfect daily wear, sports dress kind of timepiece, the perfect beach to office, and with, of course, a tungsten bezel, it's a lot more durable than, say, something like a white gold bezel on a Rolex Datejust. Just my personal opinion, but I feel that the Omega Glowmaster is much more wearable. It's one of those underrated designs, and I feel that it has all the history and all the merits of ownership. Now, one little cool design quirk that I actually like is on the actual case back of the Omega Glowmaster. You can see the watch actually having an observatory stamp on it. And that's a really interesting fact because Omega has a rich history of winning observatory trials. The brand won a staggering 93 victories and set 72 world records at the observatories at Kew Teddington, Neuchâtel, and Geneva, which were once considered really the Oscars of watchmaking and chronometry. Essentially, Omega were setting records in timekeeping that were unparalleled for the age from any watch brand out there. So it's really an incredible model line that has, again, that rich history of not only the Gerald Genta design, but also the incredible accuracy of the timepiece. Now, my second pick is going to be the Omega Aquatera, another watch that is, I would say, no secret out there, as it's actually been produced since 2002. It's hard to think that the watch is almost 23 years old now, or it is now at the time of this video, as it is 2025. Happy New Year to all of you guys. But the Omega Aquatera, I think, is just one of those absolutely incredible beach to office watches, just like the Omega Glowmaster, that perfect daily driver that really can do absolutely anything, be it dressed up or dressed down. And of course, that water resistance is super practical for everyday use. Now, you could get it in a ton of different variations, but if you're looking at some of the older examples, say things from like the early 2010s or the late 2000s, you can actually pick these up with an automatic movement under $3,000. It's hard to think that you're picking up an Omega with that kind of amazing twisted lug case design for under $3,000, but that's just what the market generates today. Now, of course, the newer ones with the teak deck dials, I think, are a lot more interesting, and overall, I like just the significant upgrades that they've made over time with this wristwatch, especially with respect to the movement itself. But you can still pick these up, generally speaking, under the $4,500 price point all day long. Again, this is a watch that retails right around the $6,000 to $7,000 price point, depending on the variation you're getting. And I think there's so many dial options out there. You can really pick one that suits your personal taste and style, and really speaks to your collection, right? The thing that I really like is the newer colors that they came out with, almost like the Stella dials, right? The Rolex copies that people were so upset over. But I think there's such a distinct and colorful design that they are so different from the Rolex counterparts, the red, the orange, just being absolutely standout dials that just aren't really replicated on the market today. I can't think of any other wristwatch that really copies that kind of design. Now, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention at least one Speedmaster model, and my personal preference is actually not the Seamaster Professional, just a regular diver watch. It's actually the Seamaster Professional GMT, namely in the reference 2534.50. Now, we're talking about a wristwatch from Omega in the Seamaster twisted lug case that, of course, is so famous for being worn by Pierce Brosnan in the James Bond movies, but with the added GMT complication made for the 50th anniversary of the Seamaster. I think it's such an amazing design that they never replicated since then, which I think is a real shame. And if I was picking a Seamaster to add to my personal collection, I would 100% pick that one, especially in the white dial. I just find it's a lot harder to find really nice white dial sports watches as opposed to black dial, which there is a lot more options and variety out there. Now, of course, these are watches that vary kind of tremendously in price point depending on condition and if it has the original box and papers. But generally speaking, you can pick these up all day long under $4,000. And again, it's one of those bargains that are out there that are actually becoming quickly harder and harder to source and find, especially in good condition and complete, as those boxes kind of disintegrated over time. But overall, the watch itself is just absolutely stunning. I think it truly is one of those underrated future classics from Omega, especially considering they didn't make anything with that same complication like it since, of course, the 50th anniversary. Now, I'm going to go up in price point with Omega, which may not necessarily be underrated to people out there because we're going to be talking about a price point under $15,000, which is not what most people consider when talking about Omega, right? Most people are going to want things under $5,000. But there's a set of chronographs that Omega made that I think are just absolutely phenomenal. Just these old style chronographs as part of their museum collection. Specifically, I really like the number 8. It's this TriCompact as part of this gold kind of museum collection using some really interesting Frederick Piguet movements for under $15,000. It has, I think, all of the allure of like a vintage Patek or like a vintage chronograph, something made almost in a bygone era, but at a price point that is just unmatched in the industry. Again, you're getting a super solid movement from Omega that was actually only used in one other watch, which was an enamel dial Speedmaster, which was made kind of for some anniversary, but a super high level chronograph movement from Omega in a case and a proportion that I think are just absolutely perfect. Again, the design is just superb on it. And I think at under $15,000 with a brand like the history and pedigree of Omega, it's hard to think of a high level precious metal chronograph wristwatch that you're going to get from really any of the big name kind of retailers, Omega, Cartier, Rolex, Patek, JLC, or any of these other brands that I think are really prestigious for under that $15,000 price point. I think it has all the merits of ownership for somebody who's looking for a classically inspired chronograph. And I think that these are another one of those deals that are quickly disappearing. Actually, you see them less and less being resold. And it's going to be one of those future classics that I think people are sleeping on now, but are definitely going to kick themselves for not picking up. I've tried on both of them, both the bicompacts and the tricompacts chronograph, and both were absolutely beautiful on wrist. Just this absolute kind of evocation of a bygone era. It really is stunning classical watchmaking, but brought to the 21st centuries with modern case size and build quality. Okay, and last but certainly not least is another super underrated watch from Omega, and that is the Omega Railmaster. Now, I'm a big fan of the Railmaster specifically for the heritage when it comes to the anti-magnetic properties of it, but I like the fact that it's just a simple wristwatch in modern terms. Now, I like both the black dial with that kind of brush dial and the blue kind of jean dial, if you will, because it's just kind of that almost Rolex Explorer-like format, right? Just a time-only, very simple, very classical tool watch in an all-brush format that I think is just super easy and practical to wear on a daily basis. And it's a watch you can pick up all day long under generally the $4,000 price point. Again, just another one of those crazy value Omegas that are packed with technology and just incredible innovation and a great movement from Omega, highly accurate coaxial escapement. I mean, there's just so much to love about this wristwatch. And again, the design of it, I would say, is really unlike anything else. Although it shares kind of, to a certain extent, design cues from something like the Omega Aquatera with that kind of twisted lug case. I like the fact that it has that all-brush tool watch look that I think can be lost in a lot of modern wristwatches, which have become increasingly more like kind of blingy pieces of jewelry. It's one of those few remaining kind of tool watch aesthetics out there on the wristwatch market for a watch that was generally used by, of course, railway workers for its anti-magnetic properties, along with something like the Rolex Milgauss, for example. So guys, that's my list of my top 5 most undervalued Omega wristwatches out there. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. What, of course, are some of your favorite watches from Omega that you feel are super underrated. I would love to get your picks. As always, if you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you hit the like on it, subscribe for more videos like this in the future. My name is Marco for the Burdeen's Jewelry YouTube channel, and I'll see you